Namaskar, I am Dr Ravishankar, Project Coordinator, ACRP on Integrated Farming System and National PI All India Network Program on Organic Farming at ICR Indian Institute of Farming System Research, Modipuram. And I am involved in natural farming research from 2017 onwards at the national level. Today, I am going to share some of the experiences which we learned from farmers as well as our own research experience and also the available historical perspective about the natural farming. The first part I am going to cover this overview of natural farming comprising of the historical background and how this has emerged in the Japan as a base for the promotion of the natural farming and also agroecology and its relation with the natural farming, integrated farming systems and its role in the natural farming, how this functional diversity which will be there in the soil is going to help to mobilize the nutrients. What is the science behind these, some of the practices which are adopted in the natural farming in this session. If you look at the historical perspective of our original traditional farming systems, the agriculture dates back to Neolithic age, that is 12,000 years ago, and it was practiced by ancient civilization like Mesopotamia and Havanko Basin, etc. And basically these were based on the cultivation near to the river belt depending on the availability of the natural resources. And our ancient literatures like Rig Veda, Ramayana, Mahabharata and also Kautilya Sastra, there are several organic inputs which are used for rejuvenating the cultivated soil has been reported in these literatures. And if you look at these scripts of Ramayana, which describes that all dead things, that is rotting corpse or stinking garbage, return to earth or transformed into the wholesome food for the nourishing the life on the land. So this is again reported in our ancient literatures. Also, like Mahabharata mentions Kamadhenu, the celestial cow, and its role in the human life, as well as improving the soil fertility, which is the basic aspect which is being covered under the natural farming. And there are certain plant species which are reported in our ancient literatures like neem tree, which is again linked to the history of our Indian civilization, has the lot of medicinal properties both for human as well as the plant well-being. And these neem as an anti-fidant effect for the locust control was reported as early as 1910. So all these literatures has formed a base for developing a certain kind of a redefined traditional practices for promoting it in the form of a natural farming. And if you look at this, some of the traditional practices like oil cake and also the use of animals excreta, all these are being mentioned in the Kautilya Arthashastra in the 300 BC. The different crops and methods of manuring are also described in our ancient literatures. Similarly, we go for the traditional farming systems. The green manuring was one of the major important aspects in improving the soil fertility, which was also reported in our ancient literatures. Forget over the years due to the promotion of these conventional farming systems with the more and more of depending on the market input based chemicals for management, especially the fertilizers or pesticides. Through that process, the area under green manuring or green leaf manuring has reduced drastically in the recent past. Even Quran stated that at least 1/3 of what you take out from the soil must be returned to it, implying recycling as the post-harvest residue. In the natural farming also, it employs that the recycling of the crop residues in the form of mulching and whatever the above ground biomass which is unutilized, that is to be returned back to the soil for improving the soil fertility as well as reducing the weed infestation, as well as for encouraging the microbial activity to transform the nutrients from the soil. So our ancient literature based practices which are incorporated in the natural farming is having the very strong scientific background to improve the soil fertility, in turn to improve the crop yield also. Even if you see, Rig Veda mentioned the use of poisonous plants for the pest control. This is what exactly like Nemastra, Brahmastra, the Sparniarch and also many other botanicals which are recommended under natural farming uses these principles which are mentioned in our ancient literatures. If you look at some of the botanical insecticides were also used for the seed treatments and also as a fungicides in other countries, not only in India. It was also used in China. And also many of the flowers, fruits, leaves, bark and roots as the They are called as the Panjamrit, and they are being utilized for the management of insect and diseases in our earlier days of farming practices. Even these delousing procedures for the children were also in the ancient literature, which forms the background for the promotion of the natural farming. So coming to the natural farming in the present form is basically it is a locally available on-farm traditional input-based integrated system with the good agronomic practices. Basically, main difference between the organic and natural farming is the use of these on-farm inputs, whatever available, in an efficient and also in an economic way, with all kind of good agronomic practices, which includes your multi-cropping, which also includes the mulching, also green manuring, all this type of precision management in terms of application of water through the improved management practices like drip and sprinkler irrigation. All these are included in the natural farming, and this revolves around the coexistence principles. Means you help me, I will help you. So this is the coexistence principle in a simple way we can explain. And not only the coexistence, it also helps for the improving soil health, ecology, promotes the natural cycles and also the microflora and fauna in the soil, and also above ground diversity, and also the production density within the unit area of land. The density of the production can be enhanced under the natural farming with the all kind of important agronomic practices. Basically, if you see the organic farming, regenerative agriculture, conservation agriculture, natural farming, all these practices revolves around the globally agreed some of the agroecological strategies, which includes the enhanced soil organic matter, which is the very base for the growing of crops or the plants on the soil. Because the soil organic matter is there, it will help for the nutrient transformation. It will also help for the conservation of the water, and it will also helpful for the sustaining the soil for the longer period of time. Then another important strategy is diversified field borders, which is again very, very essential for maintaining the balance, ecosystem balance, form of your natural enemies population, and thus reducing the insect and also the pest and disease management. Then there is a reduced tillage. With the constant and also continuous tillage, soil organic carbon get reduced over a period of time. Now there is, due to conservation agriculture and other practices, the reduced tillage or minimum tillage is given more weightage in order to conserve the soil organic carbon or organic matter for taking the various advantages. Then another important point in the global climate change scenario, the water is going to play a very important role in coming future. So water harvesting is integrated or inbuilt into this kind of agroecological strategies, which are agreed at the global level. Then again, livestock integration. Without livestock, the agriculture is very, very difficult. As you know, many of these organic inputs which are required for enhancing the soil organic matter comes from the livestock in the form of dung, urine, and also the other waste materials. So the livestock integration is inbuilt into the natural farming, as it uses the all type of concoctions like Jivamrit or Ganajivamrit. These are prepared from the livestock. Then again, the natural farming is mandated to, under the natural farming, we need to have the cover and legume crops, basically for the purpose of biological nitrogen fixation, as well as to conserve the soil and also reduce the weeds we compete with the crops. Then polyculture is one of the major component in the natural farming. Apart from this, agroforestry, and whatever the natural farm which we are proposing to develop, it should have the habitat for the beneficial insects multiplication. So not only plan for the natural farm should be developed in such a way that it helps the attracts the bees, it attracts the all beneficial insects. And the last important thing which is globally agreed agroecological strategies is that active soil biology. That means we need to keep the soil alive, encouraging the native soil microbial population. So due to the continuous and constant use of these chemical fertilizers, the soil chemical properties are altered, whereas the physical and also the biological properties are affected. So in order to have the concurrent improvement of all these three properties like physical, chemical and biological properties, which are very, very important for ensuring a good crop production, we need to go for the use of these organic manures or the concoctions in the natural farming, which are recommended to be used at different rates, like Ganjivamrit and also the Jivamrit at the rate of 1500 liters per hectare, or depending upon the soil conditions. So these all, whatever the practices which are integrated in the natural farming, is using all these 10 agroecological strategies, which are very important for reviving or regenerating the agriculture for the coming generations. So in this process, I also would like to just mention about what is the emergence of the natural farming from as early as 1896 to 1982. The organic farming book was published, in which the organic versus chemical farming, the advantages, disadvantages were compared. And based on that particular thing, in the Japanese island Masanobu Fukuoka, the natural way of farming, or it is described as the do nothing farming or Fukuoka method, it is based on the recognition of the complexity of the living organizations that shape an ecosystem and deliberately exploiting it. So in this process, a rice crop was grown, and after the harvest of the rice crop, residues were not harvested on the field, only the panicles were harvested, and again the pulse crop was sown on the residues in that particular method of farming, wherein without any cultivation, without any application of compost, prepared compost, and also the tillage or weedicides, and without any dependence on the chemicals, the pulse crop was successfully grown, and which has given the scope for growing of these crops with reduced tillage and without applying any inputs. And whatever the straw which was there in the soil, leftover straw, it got decomposed, and it was sufficient to give the nutrients for those pulse crops. So this was the beginning of in which the natural farming emerged over the years. It is aware that the four major components of the natural farming includes the seed treatment or the microbial seed coating, and it again involves the Jivamrit, which is again application of both solid and liquid form for encouraging the soil microbial activity, and also encouraging the atmospheric nitrogen fixation in the soil, and for keeping the ground covered, and also to build up the soil humus. This Achyutana practice is involved in this natural farming, which includes the crop residue mulching or the soil mulching, or even growing of the cover crops in the form of legumes. And then due to the continuous and constant addition of these crop residues and also the cover crops, there is a fast buildup of soil humus, and through which the soil aeration and also the water vapor harnessing can happen in the natural farming systems. These are all the four major core practices. And nowadays, we are talking about the sustainable agriculture. The sustainable livelihood for the farmers can be achieved through four strategies. One is there should be a constant increase in income, and also there should be a constant reduction in the expenditure, that is on account of purchased inputs. That is basically the paid out cost, like spent on the seeds, fertilizers, pesticides, and also the other inputs. Then there should also be an increase in on-farm employment for the people, and there should be a reduction in the risk. The risk which happens on two accounts. One is the market-related risk, the another one is the climate-related risk. So both risks are to be reduced. So if we are able to address all the four things together, then we can achieve the sustainable livelihood for the farmers, and this is very much possible through a integrated production system, not in the monocropping system or in the current conventional farming systems. So these sustainable livelihood can be measured in three dimensions. One is ecological and economic efficiency and social equity. Whatever the alternate farming systems which we are talking, natural farming, how this is going to help for the ecological security in the long run, economic efficiency, for each rupee we are investing, how much we are getting, and also how it is ensuring the social equity. If we measure these three dimensions, then we can say that this is the sustainable livelihood security. And based on our studies and also the research papers which we have published, these integrated farming systems are having the potential for achieving the sustainable livelihood security. Exactly, the natural farming aims to promote integrated farming production systems through the practices such as concoctions prepared from the livestock as well as the identified plants, intercropping, mulching, and also the other practices. So coming to the definition, how we can define this natural farming? In a simple term, this can be defined as an agricultural production system which mainly emphasizes on use of locally available on-farm or traditional inputs integrated system with good agronomic practices that encourages the coexistence and also the soil health, ecology, natural cycles, natural microflora and fauna, diversity, improves the production density with good production management system. So, in this particular definition, if you see all the good things in the farming is described. Like good agronomic practices, this includes the intercropping, multicropping for raising the productivity of the land as well as the fixing the atmospheric nitrogen, because leguminous plants can fix the nitrogen. Because of this biological nitrogen fixation and also adding of these concoctions increases the below ground and also the above ground diversity in terms of plants, in terms of microbes and also the other beneficial organisms. So in this process, you can see that natural farming leads to benefits such as there is a reduction in cost of cultivation, and due to that reduction, it also generates the more income. Especially the paid out cost for the fertilizers, pesticides are reduced significantly. This also reduces the water requirement of the crops, basically on account of increased soil organic matter and also reduced use of water can be achieved. Then this is a risk in agriculture can be reduced because of multi-cropping. Even one crop fails, the other crop gives the returns to the farmers. Also, this can also reduce the climate related risks also, even in the event of heavy rainfall or in the drought also. This type of multi-cropping, polycropping systems more resilient than the monocropping systems. And the land degradation, which is one of the major concern nowadays, can be reversed through this type of natural farming systems. And also, this gives the sustainable yield and also round the year income due to the integrated production systems, because it involves not only the growing of crops, the livestock is also must for practicing the natural farming. This also ensures the sustainability and also the year-round income for the farmers. Then what is the principles which are to be adopted in the natural farming? There are certain guiding principles which we need to follow while preparing for the natural farming. This is like a combination of crops. We must always select the crops like annual crops with the perennials, then the livestock and also the related subsidiary enterprises like apiary, boundary plantations and also some kind of a mushroom which can be grown with the residues, rice straw, etc. So these subsidiary enterprises are also needed. Then these all whatever the enterprises which we are going to develop in the natural farming, it should have the interdependent and also the interrelated, and also sometimes it is interlocking production systems. That means one component is completely depend on the other component, so that there is a mutual benefit for the farm. Then this also revolves around the principle of maximum utilization of the output nutrients from one component to the other components and reduce the negative impact of these enterprises on the environment, particularly on account of emission of the carbon from the current conventional farming systems. And basically, if you see these natural farming, organic farming, integrated farming systems or the regenerative agriculture, all these aims to address the soil organic matter improvement, promoting the above and below ground diversity, carbon sequestration, which is again very important on account of climate change, then enhancing the land productivity, improving the diversification, reducing the paid out cost by reducing the cost of cultivation, enhancing the income, reducing the risk, sustainability, as well as if properly planned natural farming model or farm can address almost 13 sustainable development goals at the household level. Apart from these core practices of natural farming, like use of these concoctions, Jivamrit, Ganjivamrit, Bijamrit, then intercropping, then mulching and also Vapsa, there are certain other practices which are also used by the farmers. This is based on our study which we have conducted in different states, as well as from the APCN, that is Andhra Pradesh Community Managed Natural Farming. This includes the pre-monsoon dry seeding and then integrated pest management practices like trap crops, biocontrol agents like Bavaria, Bassiana, this neem seed kernel extract, mechanical traps. These are also being used by the natural farming farmers in order to manage the pest and diseases. So if you see all these natural farming practices, the many of them are scientifically proven, and these can be directly recommended to this one. And some of the things also we have done the complete characterization, what is available in that, how this is benefiting to the nutrient recycling process in the soil. Then with respect to the mulching and also intercropping, there are certain limitations for the farmers, which includes you want to use the crop residues for mulching. There is a competitive demand for the livestock as a fodder. So that part also we need to look into it while deciding the which type of material, mulching material we need to use for the under the natural farming. Similarly, once you go for multi-cropping or intercropping, there are certain limitations in the use of machineries. So there is a need to plan and also develop machineries, use them appropriately to reduce the cost of cultivation, especially on account of using the manual labor under the natural farming. Then these input preparation methods, basically this Bijamrit, Jivamrit relies for the enhancing the soil microbes in the form of a undisturbed soil and also the cow dung which is being used in the preparing these inputs. We have done some studies on the Jivamrit as well as the Ganjivamrit, which is prepared from the 3 different forest soil, and what we found in this study is very critically that the amount from where this undisturbed soil is taken for preparing these inputs play a very important role in final composition of the microbial population in these inputs. But what we nevertheless in all the preparations, all the inputs, we find there is a significant amount of relieving nitrogen fixers, phosphorus solubilizing bacteria and also the potassium solubilizing bacteria. These in turn help for the mobilizing the nutrition, native nutrient supplying capacity of the soil as well as fixing the atmospheric nitrogen into the soil. So this is very, very important that from where you are using this undisturbed soil for preparing these concoctions, always it is preferred that it is from the under the banyan tree or from the undisturbed forest soil. If it is not available, this undisturbed soil from the bunds can also be utilized for preparing these concoctions. There are certain plant protection inputs which are being utilized in the natural farming. As I explained in the beginning, these are having very strong backing of our ancient literatures, and these were used in the control of the pests or diseases in the earlier years also. So with the interventions of this proper ratio of mixing of these plants and proper preparation methods, these also play a very, very important role in controlling the insect and diseases in a prophylactic way in natural farming. So they like Brahmastra also, there are many plants which are used for preparing this Brahmastra, and each plant is having its own potential for the fungicidal properties as well as the insecticidal properties and also the antifeedant properties. These helps for the control of the insect and also the diseases. Similarly, neem also, as I have explained in the historical perspective itself, the neem is having the many properties which is for the maintaining the health of the both plants as well as the animals. So in this process also, this can be recommended under the natural farming systems for promoting in the pest and disease control. And another important inputs which are used is the Sperny extract, wherein whatever the listed plants, this can be utilized for preparing this, and then this can be used against the sucking pest or the diseases also. And another important aspect which the natural farming we need to address is the weed management, because basically under the natural farming we cannot use any other methods for weed management. Basically this intercropping, cover cropping or mulching, these are all the basic practices used for weed management. While these are proven practices, but still there are farmers, if they feel that there is a more amount of weeds, they should go for the stale seed bed. That means irrigating the fields, allowing the weeds to germinate and then incorporating into the soil after the 30 days before flowering. So that will reduce the weed population significantly. So this can also with the process of this one, and also this multivariate seeds. Normally in the conventional systems, the lands are kept fallow during the summer period, or some farmers they grow the green manure crops. Whereas in the natural farming, it is essential to go for the multivariate crop during the fallow period. This will help for the multi-crop or multi-CN ratio residues being incorporated into the soil, and that will enhance the longer supply of the stabilized release of the nutrients from the soil. As I told, this multivariate cropping, this is like a simple mixture of seeds of green manures, cereals, pulses and oil seeds to be mixed and then broadcasted during the fallow period. And these seed rates are as per the seeds mixed and also the requirement. Generally 25% of the seed rate is recommended for mixing. Then these crops are allowed to grow till planting of the next crop. If any crops come to the economical produce, then we can harvest it. Otherwise, entire biomass is incorporated into the soil. And what are all the benefits type of cropping during the fallow period is that this reduces the weed population significantly because of dense population of different crops and also the different rooting pattern. Then there is a underground allelopathic effect which again reduces the pest disease causing organisms. Then the stabilized release of nutrients through the decomposition process because these residues are having the wider CN ratio. Then soil microbial biomass enhancement and also the suppressing of the soil-borne pathogens also. Then under our All India network program, we have done certain research experiments, multi-locations, and we try to understand the science behind the use of concoctions. You know, in the conventional farming system, normally we recommend these biofertilizers like Azospirillum, Astrobacter, but these are having the limitations of self-life, limitations of timely availability to the farmers. Whereas this natural farming relies on the on-farm prepared these biofertilizers in the form of Jivamrit or Ganjivamrit, and they are having the sufficient amount of nitrogen fixers, phosphorus solubilizers and potassium mobilizers. And these constant addition of these concoctions coupled with the mulching of crop residues enables for the better decomposition and supply of nutrients from the soil. And we also studied the genomic diversity of these microbes in the soil, which indicates that there is a dominance of prokaryotes like Pseudomonas as well as D. sulfurose, which are helpful for the decomposition as well as mineralization of nutrients from the soil under the natural farming. And we tried to quantify the effect of concoctions on the yield of the crops, and in different cropping systems, the contribution of concoctions to the yield ranged from 7.8 to 25.8% in the different cropping system. And similarly, the mulching plays a very important role, as I have already explained in detail the role of mulching. And due to the addition of this maintenance of the residue cover, there are decomposition takes place and also some residues remains on the ground of the soil, which helps for the water harnessing during the rainfall period and helps for the again conserving the moisture as well as reducing the weed population apart from the other advantages. The mulching contributes to the yield to the level of 11 to 25.7% in different cropping systems which we have studied. Similarly, the multi-cropping or intercropping is very again important role. You know, many of the leguminous plants are having the nitrogen fixing capacity different levels. And these also acts as a insurance, provides complementary benefits of additional yield, improved water use efficiency and also the land use efficiency, and reduces the weed infestation significantly. And basically this anidation, that is negative allelopathy effects due to the underground microbial enhancement also happens due to the intercropping. And among all the practices of natural farming, intercropping contributes for the 9 to 67% for the yield under the natural farming. So intercropping is very important and also the mandatory practice which should be followed in the natural farming systems. There are certain practices which are inbuilt into the natural farming like zero tillage or reduced tillage, and then diverse crop rotation, organic manures, and then optimum soil environment. These promotes the below ground diversity. It helps for the enhanced native earthworm population. You can see here from control to natural farming almost close to 3 times improvement in the earthworm population. That helps for the mineralization of the nutrients. These are all some of the photographs like intercropping in the soybean plus maize system and also the rice-based cropping system. You can see the other treatments where ICM, organic farming control is there, where the soil is exposed But in case of complete natural farming, the entire ground is covered. That is the basic beauty of the natural farming systems, wherein the ground is kept covered almost all the days in a year through a multi-cropping, and also the crops having the different rooting pattern and also the above ground biomass. Then our results indicates that there is a significant reduction in the cost of cultivation over the organic farming or the integrated farming crop management under the natural farming. And also we found in the legume based cropping systems, especially soybean based systems, cowpea based systems, cassava based systems, there is a yield advantage also we found in the initial years itself when we practice all the pillars of the natural farming. And in some of the coastal areas, we have conducted studies wherein we found, like in the rice black gram system, which is practiced prevalent in the Vijayanagaram district of Andhra Pradesh, the best management practices give about 5.3 tons of per hectare yield, whereas the average productivity of the district is only 2.3 tons per hectare, and the yield gap is about 2 tons per hectare. So, but in the natural farming demonstration, we could able to get the 3.2 tons per hectare, because the farmers were able to prepare the inputs locally and then apply very efficiently in the timely manner. So that has contributed for a significant improvement in the yield to the level of 38% and reduction in the cost of cultivation also. This one. So by promoting this type of natural farming in the type of tribal areas, low input using areas, we can go for achieving the higher production also in the overall. And similarly, same type of experiments which were conducted in other coastal parts also, Karnataka also, we found similar type of results wherein the increase in the yield as well as the decrease in cost of cultivation was observed. So also in Kerala also, in vegetable crops especially, vegetable cowpea could lead to almost 9.9 tons per hectare. Better God, we could get about 13.4 tons per hectare under the natural farming systems with all type of practices which are there in this one. Apart from this, there is a improvement in the soil physical as well as the biological properties, which is very, very important. Again, soil enzyme activities are also significantly improved due to these natural farming practices. Then the microbial biogas carbon, which again play a very important role, and under natural farming this was also found to be better. Then we also published some of the research papers which are already available online, so these can be referred for the further reading. So thank you one and all.